Okay, Shalom, right, wonderful lesson. And we're going to be looking at this concept we found in 1 Chronicles 29:29, the words of Gad the Seer, and also how that links up to the concept of Ahiyah, Asher, Ahiyah, I am that I am. Very fascinating lesson. First of all, however, I will just point out that next lesson we're also going to be going over this concept, which is also extremely fascinating. It's the concept of how do the words of Gad the Seer and what's written in 1 Chronicles 29 link up to this seal of Hezekiah that was found next to the Temple Mount. Okay, it's very interesting because there's lots of concepts that we really need to clarify when we're looking at this actual official seal of Hezekiah, i.e. why is it written in Phoenician alphabet? Why does it have an Egyptian ankh and the Egyptian winged sun image on it? And there's lots of things that we can actually learn just by looking at this particular seal of Hezekiah, one of the kings of Yehuda. So that's going to be for next lesson, but there's lots of things that we need to really start to understand, and we need to be mature enough to understand them and also interpret them in a reasonable way, with reason, hence stands to reason. But anyway, going to this lesson now, the book of Gad the Seer. This is the verse that we've been looking at. The words of King David in the first and the last, behold, they are written in the words of Shmuel, Samuel the seer, and the words of Nathan the prophet, and the words of Gad the seer. So this lesson we're going to be having a look again at this aspect and in the words of Gad the seer, but also looking, and they're all related back to the concept of Ahiyah, Asher, Ahiyah. So this is very profound because this is the name as revealed, the name of God as associated with the level of Keter, which is crown. Okay, so there's all merciful levels, the levels of mercy and the levels of crown. So, and the words of King David, the first and the last. Okay, so there's even something in that quite prophetic, isn't there? The first and the last. So what are the last ones? Because we're in the last days now. So all kinds of things that we can just consider regarding this. It's all incredibly interesting. So last lesson we looked at some of the gematria regarding this phrase taken from this verse and in the words of Gad the Seer. And this lesson we're going to have a look at this, which is the square ordinal of this particular phrase in Hebrew. And squared ordinal basically means each letter according to its ordinal position in the alphabet squared. So the first letter here is Vav. So Vav is the sixth, 6 times 6. And then you've got Ayin and then Lamed, and whatever position that they are in the alphabet, you just simply square that. So that's where we get the square ordinal. SO in all my teachings, SO stands for square ordinal. Okay, so let's go and have a look because this is absolutely incredible, and we've really got to talking about the words of King David. So it's prophetic. What is this particular phrase teaching us that we can learn and absorb into our lives today in order for us to get from that place of exile to redemption that we so do seek? Ahiyah, Asher, Ahiyah. So straight away, I am that I am. 543 regular, 84 ordinal comes to 627. The square ordinal of Ahiyah, Asher, Ahiyah is 1144. Exactly the same as, and these are the words of Gad the Seer. Okay, that contain a revelation of the words of King David, before and after. So what is it then? If these are pointing us to this name, Ahiyah, Asher, Ahiyah, what can we learn about that? And there's all kinds of significance here. We need to bear in mind that 543 is 3 times 181, because this is a very significant messianic number. It reveals a lot, like exactly who the Mashiach is. And then also this is Ahiyah, Asher, Ahiyah, filled, 1267. Very significant yet again. Okay, even this number is significant, but I don't think we're going to go through that in this lesson. But anyway, we're definitely going to come to this because this is linked to the beginning of that verse and talking about the words of David before and after. It's all really wonderful stuff. So this is Ahiyah, Asher, Ahiyah, filled, where it's written here. I've actually filled it out. So each letter as it sounds: Aleph, He, Yod, He, Aleph, Shin, Resh, Aleph, He, Yod, He. So as every letter in Asher as it sounds. So it comes to 1,267 regular, 250 ordinal. Together they come to 1,517. And then we've got Ha Gerizim, Mount Gerizim. I've actually seen this a couple of times because I visited a place called, on my way to visit Shiloh, my youngest son, who was saved in the car accident that I talked about in the last lesson. When I was 6 months pregnant, I had an horrific car accident. He's called Shiloh, and was pregnant the very first time that I visited Eretz Yisrael with him. And there's a whole story regarding why I called him Shiloh. Basically called him Shiloh because we went to see this. We were in Jerusalem. We went to visit this park. And this Hungarian Jewish man sat next to us, and he was talking away. And my husband at the time said to him, "What's the name of your son?" And he said, "It's Shiloh." And he says, is there a name in English? He said it would be Shiloh in English. So then, obviously, my husband at the time knew this name from within Genesis, the blessing to Yehuda. And I always went with the intention of thinking, when I go to Israel, I'm going to get an inspiration of what my son's name was. Like I say, I was pregnant at the time, and it was the first time visiting Israel. I'm going to, and it was just prior to the really nasty car accident I explained last lesson. I'd really basically just gotten back from Israel, and then I had this horrendous car crash. So he was called Shiloh based on that conversation that we had with that man, because I felt, there was something about it, there was something about it. And he didn't know anything himself much about the word Shiloh. And we were a little bit umming and ahhing about it. And I actually called him Shiloh Nathanael because I were 100% convinced that I would want a son called Shiloh, because I never heard that it was a name that other people had given, Shiloh. So I just thought, just in case it don't go down well, I'll call him a name that is more acceptable. If he wants to call himself Nathaniel, he can do then. So that was my reasoning. But I've actually been up Mount Gerizim on the way to Shiloh. We went to Ithamar. It's all in what's called the West Bank. It's really Yehuda and Samaria. But we went there, and we went and visited this Ithamar, which is around that area, around Shiloh. And you can even go see the site where the temple at Shiloh was built and things like that. And I've had a good old rummage around. I've even got pieces of pottery that I picked up off the ground from there, and other little souvenirs. And it's very interesting. But from Ithamar, you can just look over to the east, and you can see both the mountains, Mount Gerizim and Mount Aval or Ebal. And Mount Gerizim is the mountain of blessing, and obviously Mount Aval or Ebal is the mount of cursing, and one's like lush and one's like stony. And then around that area is also the Samaritans, and I visited the Samaritan village. I went and had a tour into Nablus at one point. It's now called Nablus. It is actually Shechem. I went with the only intention of going to visit Joseph's tomb, and I right at the end got to go visit Joseph's tomb, which I was very, very happy about. But it was like this pro-Palestinian tour, because Jews aren't permitted to go and go to the tomb or anything like that. Not that I'm Jewish. I'm of the house of Joseph, as far as I'm aware. But Jews are not permitted without permission to go visit the tomb of Joseph. So I had to go on this pro-Palestinian and listen to all the story. And I'm glad I went, because I found out a lot of things about the whole area. And there's things that we do need to know about. There is two sides of the story, and we've got to be aware, and we've got to be mature enough, and we've also got to come up with solutions that are effective to the problems that Israel is facing. Okay, I'm looking for good solutions in my mind and in my thoughts and in the actions that I do in my life. But I'm very glad it was very illuminating. I saw a lot that was wrong, I saw a lot that the Arabs were actually harming themselves in a lot of ways, but then I saw a lot of very precious and wonderful things when I went. So it's all this Mount Gerizim, and then you can go see the Samaritan community that are based on that mount. When I went to Nablus, we went and visited the Samaritan community, and obviously they hold this particular mountain in very high regard. And going back to that Phoenician alphabet that we talked about, their Torah scroll is still written in that script. So that is considered the original Hebrew script. However, it, when we come to next lesson, we'll go over that. So this Mount Gerizim is also equivalent to I am that I am. When you go to Israel, you sort of bring to life some of these things. Some of these, it becomes real, doesn't it? When you've been on that mountain, and when you've gone to these communities, and when you've seen, the whole situation, and this is a fascinating area of Israel. Not many people go into it, obviously, because it's the West Bank, and there is a lot higher risk. Like Itamar has been attacked by terrorists. And horrific, murders have occurred. The whole Fogel family were murdered in Itamar, and other things have happened since then. It's just absolutely horrendous. The rabbi's literally got to carry a gun with him at all times. He showed us around the Itamar community. Went twice to that community. Once we went with an organisation called Christian Friends of Israel, and then once we went on our own. Pretty much sure we did, and and then, like I say, I went on this pro-Palestinian tour into Mount Gerizim. It's all very interesting. Anyway, you've got to bring these words to life. You've got to remember that these are not just words in a book. There's a living, breathing trace of all these things in the world in which we live today, and we should try and experience it. I am that I am. He was, is, and always will be. So was all these things are today and relevant, and all these things need our attention today because they are super relevant, and they're all part of our journey. We're not just reading an historical document. We're living. It's the living Word of God, and we've got to start to connect to that as well. That whole concept. So 543 connected to I am that I am. Very important. Okay, so house of God. It's got a mispah gadol, so taking into consideration the memso feet, 1058 plus 86, which is Elohim. Just wait a minute. Oh, that's the ordinal, sorry. So the ordinal is actually 86, which is Elohim. Okay, the ordinal of Elohim I think is 41, so that must be 45 then, bait. Something like that. Anyway, it's 86 ordinal for the mispah gadol. Together they come to 1144. Okay, so very interesting how the whole concept of the house of God, bearing in mind that one of the first houses of God was built in Shiloh, all around this area that we're talking about now. However, this ultimately refers to Temple Mount, and that goes back to that Hezekiah seal as well that we will be talking about next lesson, that was found just outside the Temple Mount area. Okay, so we know it's actually an official Hezekiah seal, and there's lots of interesting things that we're going to go through with that. The house of God is sometimes referred to as Metatron. Okay, so that goes back to what we were saying in last lesson about Colossians. You got to be very careful about people who actually worship angels, and we have got to really scrutinize ourselves to make sure that our understanding of God isn't just substituted with an angel, or our understanding of Mashiach, who is a revelation of the name of YHWH. We don't just ascribe what our understanding of Messiah or our understanding of YHWH, we don't just understand it in terms of the angel that coordinates the whole of creation, and also coordinates the revelation of the name YHWH and the concealment of the name YHWH. And it would appear that the angel in charge of orchestrating the entire of the way that YHWH manifests his will in this world, which is the will to reveal his utter oneness, is coordinated by angels such as Metatron. We've got to have an understanding between the will of YHWH that is made manifest in physical reality, that is governed by an angelic, all governed by different angelic forces. We've got to make sure we don't worship the angelic forces themselves. We've got to go and understand that beyond that is an unknowable infinite God that has willed for certain things to be executed within physical creation, and that he uses very high angelic forces in order to execute his will in creation. And his one will is to reveal his oneness, and he reveals that through the concept of the Mashiach, the oneness of YHWH and the oneness of his name, and the glory of the knowledge of YHWH to fill the earth as the waters cover the sea. So you've got to be very careful not to confuse our experience of a revelation of the will of God in our lives and the angelic forces that govern that revelation and concealment of his name. That's what I'm trying to clarify. It's very, very difficult. It's quite complex because it's difficult to separate out the finite from the infinite. And it's difficult to separate out what we perceive God to be within creation from our very finite perspectives, and often very exiled finite perspectives. It's very difficult to understand the difference between the absolute reality of God and the relative reality of God from our perspective within creation. We've got to make that distinction, because one's infinite and absolute, and one is a revelation of the will of the infinite, unknowable God within finite creation. So we've got to be careful. We've got to understand there is a distinction between what we perceive God to be and what God actually is. Okay, so house of God is that where his oneness is ultimately completely revealed, his sovereignty, because this represents, the house of God. It represents, the throne of David, if you like, establishing the kingdom on earth as it is in heaven, establishing the reign of YHWH. And all these things are all connected. But like I say, also Metatron is connected to the concept of the house of God, and Metatron is some angelic force that is running the show until humanity, this is from my perspective, which is what I've been able to read through a lot of study, until we have elevated ourselves up to messianic levels of consciousness, then we have got this angel, and we then take over the running of creation for our Father. We've got this slave who rules instead of the king. We collectively, humanity, should be the king that is ruling and running the entire of creation. But at this time in exile, when we're in a fallen state and we're not quite able to fully run the whole show, then there's something there instead. Okay, that something there instead is Metatron. It's very complicated Kabbalistic principles, but we've basically got to elevate ourselves up. We are like co-creators, but we've also got a responsibility to actually effectively run and shepherd the entire of creation. Take more responsibility, really take responsibility over the running of the earth, to make sure that it's not just getting exploited for the benefit of a few. Everything's got to be run properly, like the one good shepherd over all humanity is considered, not just an elite few. So all these things are all connected, and it all goes back to I am that I am. And basically this is also connected to this concept, we have got to be that we are. You know, I am that I am as well. We have got to fully reflect in our lives that name, YHWH, and this concept, YHWH. We've simply got to be our true selves. We've got to raise ourselves up to that. We've got to stop thinking that we are just the experience of the shadow of exile. You know, all the negative experiences that we experience, all the suffering that we experience in this world, all the process of rectification that we're all exposed to in order for our soul to dominate over our body, and all the challenges and temptations and desires and lies that we're all subject to that deceive us endlessly. You know, when we really start to overcome all those things and really start to assume our true identity as children of the King, that are able to, through appropriate behaviour, with the words that we think, say and do, we're able to help our Father in heaven manage the entire of creation. And that's what we should be aspiring to, and really dethroning this angel that's there until we reach our full potential. Okay, and then, you know, we're building up the house of God. The house of God, it can be, even in our own lives, we are allowing the presence of God to dwell in the body, which is our own individual temple. You know, it's the Holy Shekinah that's dominating over our body, which represents the nations. It's our inner Israel, our soul, that dominates over the outer 70 nations. That are all the, our bodily desires and influences. It's all wonderful stuff, but I mean, you can just go on and on talking about it. So there's lots of things connected to that. We simply have to attain that level where we are what we are. You know, I am that I am. And Yeshua even gives an example of this. It was misinterpreted. It's a very fine line to know our true identity without committing heresy and suggesting in any way that we are the infinite essence of God. No, we aren't. We are a mirror. We are the mirror of the entire of YHWH's names, and we are the mirror of the entire of YHWH's attributes. But we are not YHWH or his attributes himself. We are just able, once we've perfected ourselves, we're able to perfectly reflect into creation his attributes and his name, including obviously this one, I am that I am. It's who we are. We just have to realise it. We have to rectify ourselves until that is the dominant reality of our lives. Okay, then we are a house of God. Then his attributes and his names can dwell within us. And that is what is reflected out into the world without concealment. Hope I'm making myself clear. Okay, so this was the perfect example to us, wasn't it? You know, the perfect male lamb, who was Yeshua. Okay, Se Tomim Zachar. This word comes up later, male, Zachar. It's also connected to the word to remember. We've got to remember who we are. Yosef was forgotten. Okay, so Mashiach ben Yosef is forgotten. Mashiach ben Yosef is the power within us in exile, pushing us up, elevating us up, helping us to do whatever needs to be done so that we are aware of who we are, as opposed to, you know, the dirt that we're eating face down in exile with all the suffering and all the the negative character traits and things that we've got to overcome. We're on Erev Rosh Hashanah for this lesson, by the way, so it's it's good to be thinking about ways in which we can correct ourselves. In what way last year did we not remember who we are? You know, in what ways did we forget who we are and act as if we were somebody else? Not I am that I am in our perfected state. You know, we got to repent of the way that we've behaved in accordance to our lower natures, which isn't really who we are. Okay, it's and believing and giving an impression in this world that we are something other than what we are, i.e. we're made in the image of YHWH. We should be reflecting that into this world, and we fail to do that. we fail to live up to our true identity, and we are overcome by a false identity, whatever negative character traits that come as a result of believing you are and acting and speaking and thinking in ways that are less than your true identity. We've got to repent of that. Sometimes we've got to connect to the righteousness of Yeshua, because it's very hard for us on our own to remember who we are. We've got this example of Yeshua, and he brings to life that remembrance of who we are within us. His life, his perfect life, this perfect example that we've got comes to life within us slowly but surely. So we've got to attach to that. We've got to cling to it, because that's the example before us that we should be imitating. He was the perfect imitation of the name YHWH. That's what he called himself, I am. And he was the perfect reflection and imitation of all his attributes of mercy. And that's what we should be reflecting also. Okay, so it's quite connected. Not only is it connected by the 1144, it's also connected by this number, which is this filled, 1629, each letter filled as it sounds, goes to 3 times 543. So we can see that it's doubly connected to I am that I am. And we have got to be who we are through the provision that was made for us to be who we are, the perfect male lamb. Yeshua took upon himself all our sufferings and so that we might live, and he also, like I said, he empowers us to be all that we can be. That's the provision that YHWH made for all humanity, to attain those levels of perfection that are required in order to get us back to our pre-Adamic fall status, and then put us in that situation where we are growing, continual spiritual growth. The onions, so this is the food that they enjoyed when they were in Egypt, the onions. But there's lots of mystical teachings that you can glean from this concept of the onions. It's also related, as we can see, the Misbah doll is exactly the same as I am that I am. The ordinal, the regular ordinal, is 89, which is the same as evil inclination, Yetzirah, the ordinal of Yetzirah. What does that tell us then? This is the challenge, isn't it? The delusion. When we are experiencing all the different levels of reality, like the different the different skins of an onion, if you like, the multiple layers of an onion. When we are experiencing all the different levels of life within this creation, we can be overcome by the fantasy and falseness of our own evil inner inclination. So we can lose focus on what we're supposed to be, the purpose of our life, and we can be running after all this folly and emptiness and vanity, and lusts and desires. Just a distraction. It's going to distract you from attaining your true purpose and meaning in life. So we've just got to be careful. But also the Spheroth, the configuration of one of the Spheroth, like through Dreidel, we've got this configuration. It's a little bit like an onion. It's like one Spheroth, one attribute inside another. So when we're talking about imitating the names and attributes of YHWH, that can be a little bit likened to an onion. We can have multiple layers of who we are, but all those layers of who we are and what we've experienced should be reflecting the name YHWH, as opposed to reflecting the desires and whims of our evil inclination. And that word Betsalim is connected to Betzal, which is we are made in the image or in the shadow of YHWH. Okay, so we should be an image we should be like a mirror that perfectly reflects our true heavenly reality, the source of our reality, the source of our reality. We should be reflecting that in all the different layers of our existence, if you like. We shouldn't be reflecting the foolishness of our evil inclination. We should be reflecting truth. And this is connected to the Mispar Gadol number 1,000. This is our evil inclination, which is synonymous with Esav, which is synonymous with our flesh, our lower nature, our physical natures, our lusts and desires, our fantasy, fiction, imagination. 100, however, is you've got the ordinal of Yaakov, which is 47. And then when Yaakov is rectified with the truth, Od Yosef Chai, Yosef is still alive, it becomes 53, which is exactly the same as also the ordinal of Yeshua, 53. So you add 53 and 47, what do you get? You get 100. And it's also the same value as the still small voice. Okay. So we've got to connect to that. We've got to connect to the still small voice, which is the name YHWH. This is the still small voice within us that is connected to the concept of of YHWH. This is what we should be listening to, and this is what we should be imitating, in contrast to its opposite. Okay, this is also connected. The 1228 is also connected to this concept of the still small voice, because I do believe 1228, and I'm going to go show you. I believe it is the total of all the husks that surround that where YHWH is not. So the earthquake, the wind, and the fire. Let me just check that out before I go any further. Okay, I've just put this together. So the 1228, actually there's more to it than I even thought myself. So the 1100 is the gematria of the three husks of the name YHWH, where he is not, the earthquake, the fire, and the whirlwind. So you've got the wind, which is Haruach, 219. The earthquake, which is Hara'ash, I think, is 575, evil inclination. Okay, and then the fire, Aesh, 306, which is exactly the same as Ruach Elohim. Ruach Elohim, I should say. So that's opposite the Spirit of God. The fire, 306. Together they come to 1110. The ordinal of those, 39, 62 and 27, is 128. So therefore together they come to 1228, which is exactly the same as Mashiach ben David plus Mashiach ben Yosef plus 4 times HaMashiach, 4 times 57. The Mashiach. Okay, it's a little bit out of order. Yosef is still, just wait a minute, let me just bring it up. It's gone a little bit out of order. Right, just change that round a little bit. This is a powerful concept. Going back to what I mentioned about Metatron, the difference between Metatron and Mashiach. Okay. You've got this. Ma'os, bara, uvachor, batov. This is from Isaiah 7:16. It's repeated in Isaiah 7:15. It opens when the youth is not able to reject bad and choose good. Something along those lines. I'm trying to paraphrase. Now, the youth, Na'ar, is related to Metatron, who is also called Na'ar, the youth. Why? Because there's an aspect to Metatron that is connected to Enoch, and an aspect of Metatron that Enoch became Metatron, if you like, or became included in the concept of Metatron, who is the prince of the world, by the way, running the whole show, like I've just said. But like I say, he's only running the whole show until we down here in exile assume that leadership. Enoch is like a prototype, what we should be aspiring to. Enoch became Metatron. What does that mean? He became the one that rules the whole, runs the whole show for our Father in Heaven, YHWH. However, it's called Na'ar because he was the youngest angelic form. He wasn't always human. He was partly. He wasn't always angelic. He had a human origin. Okay, there's all kinds of mystical Kabbalistic teachings in this, but basically, there will be a time where we ourselves are elevated up to that messianic level as opposed to Metatronic level, the youth. And when it says the youth who does not know how to reject, but does not yet know how to reject bad and choose good. exactly, this is all connected to Metatron, because it's called the youth, who is Metatron. Why is he called the youth? Because he was the youngest angelic force. He was previously a human. The angels go back way before Enoch. So there's all connections to that, why he's called the youth. There's other people called the youth. Joshua's called the youth also. And he has got a defect in him as well. There's all kinds of things. It's all mystical. I'm not going to go into that now. But then the Isaiah 7:15 says, it's very messianic. It's a prophecy about the Messiah who will eat cream and honey, which is cream and date honey, when he knows how to reject bad and choose good. When he knows. So he's gone from being a youth who doesn't know how to reject bad and choose good to Messiah, which is indicated in the word the cream and butter, messianic levels of consciousness where we become aware that we are made in the image of YHWH, and we, I am that I am, like what Yeshua said. We've been perfected in our in correcting ourselves so that we do know the difference to reject bad and choose good, and we're eating cream and butter as a consequence. All messianic. 620, by the way, is Keter. So this is the name at the level of Keter. Ahiyah, Asher, Ahiyah. Ahiyah is the name that's associated with the level of Keter. YHWH is associated with the sphere of Tiferet. So all these to be connected together. However, it's like I've always said, without Metatron you have no Messiah. Without the tree of knowledge you have no the tree of life. Without the concealment you've no revelation. Without the darkness you've no light. Without the bad you've no good. So this is our work to do to get to that stage, to be able to choose bad and reject bad and choose good. There is a difference, however, how it's written. That's what I wanted to put out. So that's why you've got to unite them together. It's only united together. It's a progression that we go. We go from a place where we don't know, we're not empowered to reject bad and choose good, to that we elevated all the way back to our messianic status, if you like, where we are able to be like children of the King, reject what's bad and choose good. And once we're in that situation, then we can take over from Metatron, because we're in a much higher level than Metatron. Metatron only can do what he says. We will be able to be like YHWH and make the decisions possibly independently, because we're responsible enough to act like our Father would act. Angels can only do what they are told to do. Humans have free choice. YHWH wants to elevate us up to that level where we freely choose to do that what is good and reject that is bad. Okay. And, there's a lot of process. I mean, imagine giving the running over the entire creation to his children. Where we are responsible and we are doing that is required to take over this entire running of creation. It's quite a thing to think about. But it's only together. It's like a baby that's got to grow into an adult. You've got to go from your place of immaturity, spiritual immaturity, to get to the place of maturity. It's the egg that becomes, that is given birth, and all the time when we're in a fetus, we aren't quite given birth to messianic consciousness, like you're protected by an outer shell. That outer shell is basically evil. That's what's called the clipper, the evil forces. They're there to protect us, but they limit us also until we're ready to break out of that shell and become born with our full status. Obviously there's some developments even once you're just born. You're not born fully, whatever. But it's to get out of that outer evil shell, isn't it? At least to get out and start that growing and development process. So you can't have one way out the other. So you're in this state of immaturity before you reach full maturity. Look at the difference between the two key words. Ma'os, to reject, is no vav. When it gets to messianic levels, you've got a vav. What does the vav represent? It represents truth. And choose, so to reject and choose, both have an additional letter vav in them. What does vav? It's the truth. It's like the two missing letter vavs in the word ma'oroth, the luminaries. So it's spelt defective, so it's a curse. We begin with a curse. Without the curse, we've no blessing. So the luminaries, which is synonymous with the whole concept of the Mashiach, the sun and the moon, Mashiach ben Yosef, Mashiach ben David. We are missing some truth regarding this whole concept of Mashiach. The truth is what we have to reveal when we're battling against the lie that is, comes from the serpent. Serpent basically means, immature states of consciousness. We just have fantasy fiction there instead. We've got to overcome that fantasy and fiction to reveal the truth. It's us that has got to elevate ourselves up to that messianic levels of consciousness, but we can't do it alone. We've got to have the examples of Yeshua to look up to. We've got to have the Torah of Moshe that reveals, the truth. We've got to have the tree of knowledge of good and evil, because within that is the revelation of the tree of life to a certain degree. Well, it definitely is there. It's the dry bed, and we're going to come back to that concept later. So there's all these wonderful things that we've just got to be aware of. The word the luminaries, and I've talked about this a lot, the word the luminaries, Hame'oroth, is spelt defective, and when it's spelt defective, it's got the two missing vavs from it. It just basically it means a curse. So the Mashiach is cursed. The concept of the Mashiach, the luminaries, are cursed. What does that mean? It means that they aren't emitting the light that they should. And we've got to rectify that curse by revealing the truth that there's only YHWH and nothing else beside him. And we've got to reflect that also in our lives. Massive truth here, right here. What is the ultimate truth that we've got to reveal? That Yosef is still alive. And that also comes to 1228. We'll see that this number is connected as well to what we're going to go through today, the 347. We'll come back to that. But here it's connected to the concept of I am that I am. I'm just pointing this out because it's connected to what we're saying about Metatron. We've got to go from Metatronic to Messianic. You've just got to make that distinction. One is when we're in a state of immaturity, and one is a state of spiritual maturity. We've got to get to the place of spiritual maturity when we are not, relying on princes of the world to run the show when we should be able to. Okay, it's not to say that we ourselves are YHWH. It's just to know who we are. We are made in his image. We are co-creators, and we should be running this entire creation, not angelic forces. We should be doing the work of our Father. It's just like King David. King David should be enthroned. He isn't at this time. He should be enthroned, and he should be the inspiration for all humanity that we look to in order to be able to be those people that can run the whole show as children of the King. They'll run the whole creation as children of the King. That's the way that I look at it anyway. Just wait a minute, let me go back. Right, so I covered that still small voice, didn't I? And I saw how it's connected back to there. So 100 is the still small voice. The ordinal of the still small voice. The regular of it is 324. Add them together, come to 424, which is Mashiach ben David. I do believe it's either 324 or 424 or 434. I'm speaking off memory, but it's one of those anyway. And which is either both of them come to Mashiach ben David. One where Mashiach ben David is spelled ordinarily like Daleth Vav Daleth, and one where Mashiach ben David is spelled Daleth Vav Yod Daleth with the extra Yodin. It's 286 times in Torah. In fact, this verse includes spelling of the name David, which includes the additional Yod, the 1 Chronicles 29:29. Okay, I'll point it out next time I get an opportunity. So 100 is connected to this. This is the concealment. Okay, so I am that I am is concealed by those three husks, the fire, the earthquake, and the whirlwind. Okay, but we've got to be people that reveal that still small voice, that tell us who we really are. In the presence of the sun and before the moon. So this comes to 1144, but this, again, we've got a double connection here. And this is interesting, we'll get to it. So the regular of that is 1144, which is exactly the same as I am that I am. It's got an ordinal of 181, and we know that the regular of I am that I am is 543, 3 times 181. This is the only verse in Tanakh, it's taken from Psalm 72, where the initial letters, the Sophite letters of these 4 words in succession spell out Moshiach. So you've got Mem, Shin, Yod, Chet, Moshiach. And there's only place in Tanakh where that occurs at the end, the Sophite letters, in the right order with the flow of the text from the right to left. Okay, as you read Hebrew from right to left. The initial letters, Ayin, Shin, Vav, Yod, spell Yeshua, rearranged to spell Yeshua. Who is the Mashiach? Yeshua is the Mashiach. And again, we've got the concept of the luminaries, the sun and the moon, which are Mashiach ben Yosef, Mashiach ben Dawid, the moon. Okay, it's got all kinds of connections. And then we've got this, the Mispar Gadol, regular and ordinal, come together to 1896, which is 4 times 474 is Da'ath. Okay, so that's what we're trying to repair. Our Da'ath, our knowledge, is in a fallen state. It fell with Adam. Where did it fall from? It fell from Golgotha down into our flesh. So our knowledge of YHWH, which is the sphere that Moshe, for example, who is the Mashiach of YHWH, is equivalent to the supernal attribute of Da'ath. He's called Da'ath, the supernal sphere of Da'ath, knowledge. So it's telling us that our concept of the Mashiach is connected to Da'ath, and it's that's fallen down into our flesh. So we've got, basically, what does that mean? It means that we've got fantasy and fiction and lies, the false Mashiach. We've got to take that. Without the false Mashiach, we have no Mashiach. Again, the concept of false Mashiach will come up when we go look at that number 347 that I just pointed out on the last slide that we looked at. It came to Yosef is still alive. Okay, so it's our Da'ath that's fallen. Our knowledge of the luminaries has fallen. It's missing the truth that is the letter Vav. Okay, so we've got to toil in this work in order to reveal that truth. What is the truth? Od Yosef Chai. That, and through that it reveals the oneness of YHWH, its absolute authority and sovereignty, that there's nothing but YHWH. That is the place, that is the final destination, to have that truth revealed. And to live in accordance to that. Right, so we've got 2 concepts here that have come up. Just wait a minute, I'm going to just change this. Right, so just brought up Yavan first. So Yavan is an exile. And there's all kinds of things that we've got to learn from this exile of Yavan. It's very powerful. It's very much associated with the exile that we're in now is Edomite exile. It's really Greco-Roman exile, because they're both the same in a lot of ways. I.e., like all the Greek gods became the Roman gods, things like that. So there's a lot of similarities between Edom and Greece. However, there is a specific power that Greece has, and it's the power to assimilate, cause assimilation. We have to assimilate with the world, and this is a big lure, isn't it, in the current exile. It's that assimilation, assimilating to the fantasy of fiction, ways of thinking that we adopt because we've been exposed to like Western influences, the whole Greco-Roman Western influences. We try to assimilate to their values, making as much money as you can, buying the biggest house, driving the fastest, fanciest car, and we are pursuing all this vanity and emptiness for the sake of and it's our souls that are damaged. Our souls are not dominating. It's our fantasy fiction, and we believe that is the the true purpose of existence is to become, the most successful person that we possibly can. There's all kinds of things we try to assimilate. And then it's also so associated with academia, because the word academic comes from Greek. And things like, let's just go with academia. There's a whole, this world thinks it's got to attain these levels of academia. And it's all like... the university levels of thinking, isn't it? What is intelligence? Intelligence, you've got to go to university, and you've got to learn all these degrees and have master's degrees and doctorates before anybody will listen to anything that you've got to say. Our destiny is not to become an academic. at all. And fair enough, if you're intelligent, you've got to be intelligent, you've got to use your cycle, but it's completely different from academia. It's completely and totally different. It's a different way of thinking. It's a different kind of intellect. We've got to be careful that we don't assimilate to that level of thinking. We can use it, we can bring it in and use it in a holy way to help us understand, things that help it enrich our lives. We've not got to completely reject it. We've not got to allow it to dominate. We've not got to have these academic levels of thinking dominate. We've got to have a good cycle, which is a good intelligence. It's all based on being a Hebrew, though, not an academic, not a Greek, not a Roman. We've got to be Hebrews. Hebrews, the distinction between a Hebrew and everything else is that Hebrews seek the truth. And, we're seeking to reveal the truth that there's only YHWH and nothing else beside him. Where in academia is this being revealed? It isn't. It's just a mental exercise. Well, the thing that we've got to avoid when it comes to Yavan is philosophy. Look how it's absolutely this opposite to I am that I am, because I've come across this and I've actually done a teaching on it recently. I think it's important. It's going back to that distinguishing between that that's finite and that that's infinite, and making sure that what is finite is not YHWH. Got to make that distinction, and understanding that our perception of the infinite is very limited to his revealing himself within the created world, and that is the way that he has willed to reveal himself, like through the Sephiroth and things like that. We've just got to be able to distinguish. However, there's this entire philosophical, esoterical, mystical levels of thinking that's very much concerned with the concept of the unity of being. And I have just done a teaching of it, and we have got to understand it. However, we've got to not let that dominate over us, and it has in some areas of religion become a dominant. The whole concept of unity of being. How is God that's totally and utterly infinite also, the entire is infinite and totally unknowable, yet is also part of he's also the entire of creation that is finite. There's a paradox involved with that. It really starts to get into mental games to try and define what is undefinable. And we can run with this a lot. It's philosophical, by the way. It's rooted in Aristotle and Plato and things like that. It's very much Greek philosophy to try and define the unity of YHWH, the unity of being, how God that is infinite can also be finite. It's a mental game. It's a philosophical mental game. Yeah, it's important. It's important to be able to distinguish between God that's infinite and above and unknowable, and God that makes himself fit within creation and makes himself known to finite man. There is a distinction. We've got to be aware of that distinction. But the whole purpose of creation is not to be able to define the unity of being, which is a paradox and basically undefinable. The whole purpose of our creation the whole purpose of us within creation is to reveal his oneness, not his unity of being. So again, we've got to be careful that we don't become drawn towards philosophy like moths around a light. We've got to understand what is the purpose of our life. What are we here to do? We are here to reveal the oneness of YHWH, which is simply that he's the only power, and there is only his will being executed, and there will only his will be accomplished, which is to reveal that oneness. And part of that absolute oneness and he desires to reveal to us an aspect of his infinite perfection, and he desires for that to be made known to finite reality. So that's totally and utterly and absolutely unknowable, there is an aspect of his utter perfection that he does desire to reveal to us. Only one aspect of his utter perfection, and it's called his oneness. that he is totally one and totally supreme, and there's no other power other than him, and absolutely only his will be accomplished and nothing else beside, even though he's given us free will. It was part of his will to give us free will. Okay, so there's all these things, and it's knowing that his plan is good. Despite all the suffering that we're going through and the pain of exile and all the rectification process, that is just part of the good, that we have had to earn our right to have that oneness revealed. And he desires in his absolute love for us to bestow a revelation of his oneness to us. But we have got, because he loves us so much, he doesn't just want to give it to us. In his absolute love and his absolute goodness towards humanity, he wants us to earn that right to receive it. And we've got to have a vessel that is capable of receiving that oneness. And that is the process that we're going through now. We're building up these vessels of shalom that I talk about, and we will come back to it later in the lesson. So we've got to take all this evil and darkness and chaos, and we've got to and destruction, and transform that into its opposite, so that it becomes a vessel of tikkun that is able to receive that the infinite one desires to bestow upon us. Okay, so it's a process. So we've got to understand, we've got to be aware of that, and that's got to be our central, we're aiming for that target. We don't need philosophy. We're going to get distracted. we're going to get confused. And I've pointed this out in the lesson that I did, I think, about on the unity of being. People have been, Yeshua was killed because he said, I am, and he was inferring that he was, even though he wasn't inferring that he was the infinite God. Down here they was thinking, oh, you're saying that you are God. And that was why he was charged with blasphemy, and the Sanhedrin sentenced him to death. But this is where the philosophy comes in, and we're trying to define the difference between we're trying to define the difference between us down here that are mirrors and a reflection of the name YHWH, and I am that I am, reflecting that and reflecting his attributes, to actually thinking that we down here are his name and his attributes. Then we've got to distinguish between that. But lots of people throughout history, because they have not clarified the unity of being, the concept of the unity of being sufficiently, have been martyred for it. And that's in Islam. The mystics within Islam that have tried to define the unity of being, that have relied on Aristotle and things like that to guide them to that definition, some of them have ended up dead. And like I say, Yeshua, he was killed because there was they didn't understand that unity of being. And also within Judaism, people of obviously Yeshua was Jewish, but there's Christians that have been martyred because they've either not clearly defined the difference between I am that I am as a human, reflecting an infinite God, and he desires us to attain that level of reflection and that level of rectification, and communicating to others that we somehow believe that we are God himself. Okay, I'm trying to say something, but I think I'm getting it all jumbled up. I'm hoping I'm making it right. But this lean towards a philosophical understanding is wrong. And we've got to be careful that we don't put philosophy above a Hebrew perspective on the matter. That's what I'm trying to understand. There is truth in these things, and the truth has got to dominate over the philosophical understanding, if you know what I mean. The philosophical way that this paradox is defined. You just have got to have a Hebraic definition of it, and know that at the end of the day, this is not what God is trying to reveal to us. He's not trying to reveal to us a unity of being. He's trying to reveal to us his oneness, which is different. And we've got to stay on target. The purpose of our life is to reveal that oneness, not the unity of being, which is not definable. But a philosopher will have you running through the fields, searching for answers to questions that can't be actually answered, and then sounding rather heretical in the process. So you've got to have everything in perspective. You've got to be aware of certain philosophical issues, but not make those your raison d'etre. You don't put them at the centre. You got to put the will of YHWH at the centre, which is to reveal his oneness, his absolute authority, that he desires to perfect all of creation, to be a vessel that is able to receive a revelation of his utter and absolute oneness and perfection. But we are co-creators in that process with him. And Yavan can get in the way a lot. And it also can distract you. So you've got academia, you've got philosophy, you've also got assimilation, assimilating to these exilic powers. And then there's other things as well that you've just got to be aware of regarding Yavan. They're very obsessed with beauty. And it's wonderful to be obsessed with beauty. God made a beautiful world. But when we are putting that before, like I say, it's when we allow that to dominate over our central target, which should be to perfect ourselves, to be able to reveal that oneness of YHWH, and also to unite all humanity together as one vessel. There's got to be unity of all the vessels to be able to fill with that, the entire of creation to fill with a revelation of that oneness. So there's all kinds of things involved with that. Hope I didn't stray off too much. Then there's this concept, the man of the earth, which connects us back to Noah. Noah had a big problem here. Why? Because this talks about Noah as a man of the earth. It's sometimes interpreted as is it like a farmer, or as a specialist, or a farmer, or something like that. There's different ways it's interpreted. This 366, I think, is the same as butter and honey we talked about just recently. But anyway, I'm not going to go there now. Look at this number. The Mispah Gadol plus the regular both come to 1144. So it's connected to all this. It's connected in two ways. One, this is where Noah takes the vine and plants it in the ground. But then if you look at the mystical teachings of that, and I did a teaching recently about this, it's called Noah and the Psychedelics. Really, I go in depth and I look at the Zohar and some of the esoterical teachings regarding what exactly did Noah do. What is this referring to? And it's referring to his attempt to use mind-altering substances like wine in order to effect a rectification, to understand what Adam's sin was and Eve's sin, and rectify it in a quick way, through going through these mind-altering portals. You get a lot of this nowadays with his use of psychedelics, and somehow they're equating this psychedelic experience to actually accomplishing true rectification. It's not going to be accomplished that way. So there is an opposite to Noah trying to rectify the problems of Adam. The ultimate rectification, as we can see from here, is when we're able to say I am that I am, and know that we are a mirror to all the names of YHWH and all his wonderful attributes here on earth as is in heaven. So there is an opposite to that, but also at the same time Noah can also teach us what is really important. What's really important is to rectify the sin of Adam, to find out exactly what the sin of Adam is and rectify that. So there is some connection. Noah was righteous in what he was trying to do, but he just didn't have the power to do it. Why? Because YHWH has caused this rectification process to be within a specific time frame, so 6,000 years. It can't be rushed. Noah was right at the beginning, really, of that rectification process. We're now right at the end, and when we get to the end, we have got the ability to hasten the redemption. It says, in its time I will hasten it. Well, we are right in the time now, the time where we're able to hasten it, but we're not going to be doing it through taking psychedelics and mind-altering substances in order to try and understand super spiritual realities. It's not going to happen like that. The actual process of time itself has been the way that YHWH has brought about the rectification for all humanity. So we've got to understand that was his will, and that's exactly the way it has worked, because only his will is executed. Noah had a different will. He wanted to rectify it quickly and immediately in the most quick fix way that he possibly could. It didn't work, it didn't succeed, he ended up shaming himself. However, in its time I will hasten it. So we can go back and look. We're right at the time now where we can take note of Noah and his desire to quickly bring an end to the exile in order to usher in the redemption and get us back to our place in Gan Eden. So there is some connection to that I am. At the very end we have to rush it. But however, in its time I will hasten it. And I've done loads of teachings about this. That is basically saying, once you have the truth, you can hasten the redemption, because in its time is synonymous with the truth. The gematria is the same for in its time and the truth. It's connected to the truth. So what you've got to the regular and ordinal, I think, of the truth. So what you've got to do is understand, what is it? It's not mind-altering drugs. Literally, the truth is what alters our mind. It's that we've got to have. The truth that there's Od Yosef Chai, only Yosef is still alive. And the truth that there is only YHWH and nothing else beside him, because Od Yosef Chai is the truth that there's only YHWH. And that's again connected to the experience of going into the field. Why? Because Joseph was sent into the field. As I talked about in the last lesson, he was sent by his father into the field. Okay, and that's all synonymous with Esau. He was sent out into Esau's territory to try and dominate over it. We have been sent into Esau's territory, into the territory of the evil inclination, into the territory of the Yetzer Hara. Why? Because we've got to subdue it to holiness. Why have we got to subdue Esau to the side of holy? Well, because Esau is he's got the same gematria as Shalom, 376, and I'll probably come across this later. I'll probably bring you a slide up later. It's the same gematria as Shalom, because it's only when we take all that evil inclination and transform it from chaos into Shalom, from something that's mundane and unholy into something that is holy. It's got holy intentions, and it's used for the right sake. What sake? To reveal the oneness of YHWH, nothing else beside him. So we've got to take all those impulses and all those desires and all that will to receive, because Esau's greedy. He is the will to receive. Our soul is the will to give. Yet YHWH desires to give. What have we got to do? If he desires to give, we've got to be a vessel that is willing to receive. Okay, so we've got to take that will to receive and make it into something holy, Shalom, in order for us to receive that YHWH desires to receive. Okay, so it's all connected to this whole concept of going back to Noah, wanting to make all those necessary corrections, and knowing that we are of a time now where it is able to. And what is the key attribute that is going to accomplish the hastening of redemption? It is the truth. Why is it the truth? Because Esau is subject to lies and sheker, and the only thing to overcome lies and falsehood and false imaginations is the truth. That is the power that subdues evil and nullifies the evil, so that was once chaotic, was once evil, was once unholy, is subdued with the truth that, Esau, we need you, because without you we are not got a vessel greedy enough and big enough to contain that what YHWH desires to bestow upon us. We need a vessel and a will to receive, because YHWH wants to give, and it's the truth that subdues Esau. Once he knows what his purpose is, it's not just to receive for the sake of himself, because he knows that he will die. And this is seen in the Torah when Esau says, throw that red stuff down my neck because I'm going to die. You can have the birthright because I'm going to die anyway. He knows his normal will to receive is to satisfy his selfishness. his destructive, chaotic, self-centered, egocentric nature. But he knows he's got to give that over to Yaakov. So Yaakov's soul is to, Yaakov's will is to fulfill the will of YHWH, the whole purpose of creation. So when Esav gives his birthright over to Yaakov, what he's saying is that, look, I was the firstborn. The first impulse within a man is the evil inclination. Even when you're babies, it's the first impulse that we all have, that impulse to survive. It needs refining. And that's the whole act of him selling it. It's all mystical. He's basically surrendering the desire to satisfy his will to receive for himself, and he's giving it over to his soul, because Yaakov he's going to use that will to receive, but to receive the revelation of oneness, as opposed to receive whatever it is that's going to satisfy your selfish indulgences that cause you to die. Ego causes you to die. Being lustful and desirous is going to cause you to die. So by him handing it his birthright, his birthright, the survival instinct to fend for yourself and survive, by handing that over to the domain of your soul, the dominion of your soul, like Yaakov taking charge of that. Yaakov is, whatever we are going through in this world, we're going to stay on task. We have got something to accomplish. And, we're going to receive whatever we need to receive in order to accomplish that heavenly goal and heavenly task, which is to become vessels worthy of receiving that our Father desires to receive. I hope I've made myself clear with that. It's very important. We'll come back to that later anyway. I'll probably go through something, but I'd not intended to speak about that. Gad the prophet seer of David. So here we go again. We've got a double connection to I am that I am. 2534, which is Gad the prophet seer of David, filled out, each letter as it sounds. And this is 2 times 1267, which is exactly the same as Ahiyah, Asher Ahiyah, filled 1267. And this is incredible. It even connects even more to the verse about Gad the prophet and Ahiyah. We'll see that later. Right, then we've got this concept, the concept of the Dreidel, right? So this is again going back to that. You can't have one without the other. This is the Dreidel in exile, the Dreidel in the Holy Land when we reach a place of redemption. So the letters of the Dreidel change whether you're in the diaspora or whether you're in Eretz Israel. So the letters of the Dreidel in diaspora are Nun, Gimel, He, Shin, and that is for Nesgadol, Hayasham. A great miracle happened there. The letters when you're in the land of Israel are Nun, Gimel, He, Po, Pe, which are Nesgadol, Hayapo. A great miracle happened here. Two different numbers, therefore. If we add the two different numbers up, these two and the letters of the Dreidel, it comes to 1267. So basically these letters, these two numbers, where it's all spelt out, Nesgadol Haya Sham, Nesgadol Haya Po, plus the value of the letters as they're written on the Dreidel, the initial letters of Nesgadol Haya Sham, Nesgadol Haya Po, and add them together with these two numbers, it comes to 1267. So the Dreidel is very much connected to the concept of I am that I am. How do we become I am that I am? Well, we start off in a place of exile and we get to a place of redemption. We start off outside the Holy Land and we get back to the Holy Land. And that's our goal. Okay, it's to go from one place to the next. It's that progression, isn't it? To go from a place of concealing the name of YHWH to revealing the name of YHWH. It goes from a place of desiring to satisfy our own selfish survival lusts and instincts to giving that over to the purpose of our soul, which is to reveal, to build up a vessel of shalom, to be able to receive the oneness of YHWH and nothing else beside him. So it's just that maturity, again, going from a place of darkness into a place of light, from exile to redemption, from the tree of knowledge to the tree of life, from the lusts of our body to the desires of our soul. Right, so we can see that that's connected back to that. I've got this number, however. Oh, just to point out as well, the letters of the Dreidel outside of the Eretz Israel are 358, which is exactly the same as Nachash, serpent, also Mashiach. Right, so what does that tell us? That tells us that the entire time that we are in exile is to build us up, to fight against all the illusion and fantasy fiction of the Nachash, which is synonymous with Asaph, in order to attain those levels of messianic consciousness. Okay, once we have received messianic consciousness, then we enter into the Holy Land and things change. We've got a different number here. We've got 138. What's 138? It's the gematria of one of the names of Mashiach, which is Tzemech, the righteous branch. Okay, what does that mean? What does that tell us? That tells us that once we have overcome all the forces of the serpent and we've attained those messianic levels of consciousness where we can eat cream and butter and we know how to reject bad and choose good, and we are co-creators down here, and we are mirrors that can reflect all the names of YHWH and all his attributes, and we are vessels of Shalom that can receive a revelation of his oneness. Okay, then we're in a state of continual growth, because a branch is like, a flourishing branch on a tree that is continually growing. It means that we will go from elevation to elevation and elevation. There's no more descent. There's no more death. We will not need to die at all. Spiritual descent is called death. So when we fall from the spiritual level that we should be operating at, that's called death. There won't be any death. Once we've got into the promised land, we're just going to go up and up and up and up. And everything, whether it's good or bad, it will all contribute to a spiritual elevation. No more death. Only growth and growth and flourishing and flourishing and flourishing. Because we can ascend and ascend and ascend and ascend without limit. Because we're talking about an infinite God. There is no limit to the spiritual level that we can attain. So we'll be in a constant state of spiritual growth all the time. And that's where we're heading. That's one of the names of the Mashiach branch, like the branch of Jesse and things like that. Tree of life. It's all a wonderful connection. So these two added up come to 771, which is exactly the same as it's connected to Babylon. So this goes back to a concept that we talked about in last lesson about the final letter here of the name YHWH has got to be filled with the secret level of the Torah. The secret level of the Torah. The final letter here is the Peshat level of the Torah, the literal level of the Torah. It makes no sense at all until it's got the secret level of the Torah. It's connected to the secret level of the Torah. So we can't interpret the Peshat level of the Torah without the secret level of the Torah. What is the secret level of the Torah? Od Yosef Chai, Yosef is still alive. So without that, the literal meaning of the Torah, it's just the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It's not real Torah. It's not revealing real Torah. It's just, we're going to reveal tree of knowledge consciousness, not tree of life. Because the tree of life consciousness is the truth. There's only YHWH, nothing else beside him. And we need the whole story of Yosef, the whole story of the Mashiach ben Yosef with us in exile, strengthening us to maintain that vision, to perfect ourselves and to become redeemed and get back to Jerusalem and start building up Jerusalem. It's that life that's within us that is Mashiach ben Yosef, that's connected up to the upper light, that's connected up to the Yechidah, that is connected up to that level of soul that didn't fall, that perfect level of soul that didn't suffer the fall of Adam. It's also connected to the concept of Metatron, but like I say, Metatron until Mashiach is revealed. The slave who rules instead of a king until the true king is revealed. Okay, so that's the secret meaning of the Torah. It's all connected to Yosef, what Yosef was experiencing in the field to overcome all the powers of Esau, to reveal that truth that's hidden in that experience, that's hidden in that darkness, and to bring so that we know that there's only YHWH, nothing else beside him. None of the evil that we have faced dominates over the fact that YHWH has got a plan, and his plan is good. And we are part of that wrestling against that force that would appear to be something other than good, other than YHWH and other than his will, is there's no truth in it. It's all part of a perfect plan to bring us to that place of complete rectification. And that we get that's the truth, O Yosef Chai. Don't matter what we've experienced in exile, Yosef is still alive. Yosef, it all appeared like he was dead, but he wasn't. He was truly alive. So I've talked about that a lot. So without that secret level of the Torah that reveals that there's only YHWH, nothing else beside him, the literal interpretation of the Torah is in error. Can't be truly understood. The Pishon River, these are the 4 rivers that came out of Eden. So the first was called Pishon. This is the one that went into Egypt, by the way. There's a lot to be said about that. I've done teaching on this before, but this is connected to the Babylonian exile. It comes to 446. Okay, and as we can see, the Mispar Gadol and the regular added together come to 1,542, which is 2 times 771, which is again connected to this whole concept of the Dreidel, the 2 aspects of the Dreidel. A great miracle happened there, a great miracle happened here. So again, we've got this concept of the exile. We've got to connect that up to, which is the concept of the exile. We've got to connect it up to the concept of the redemption. What causes redemption? The truth. Okay, 446 is Ha'ameth, the truth. What did Yeshua say? He says, I am the truth. This is the truth that empowers, that must be connected to the literal interpretation of the Torah, the final letter here, the Yud connected to the He. It's a secret level of the Torah, but it's also the secret of secrets, the tip of the Yud connected up to the He, the last letter of the name YHWH, in order for us to fully understand and fully comprehend and be able to say, without doubt, there's only YHWH, nothing else beside him. Okay. And then male and female, he created them and he blessed them, comes to 1,517, which is exactly the same as Ahiyah filled out. So the whole purpose, male and female were created, and he blessed them. What? With a revelation, I am that I am. Okay, it's all connected. 41 is the ordinal of Kiseh David, the throne of David. 37 is Yeshu, the curse with which Mashiach ben Yosef is cursed in exile with us until we can transform that curse into a blessing. Okay. And then here we've got, and David rose up in the morning, and the word of the Lord came to Gad the prophet, the seer of David, saying. So why have I got that there then? Just wait a minute. Okay, so I figured it out. This bit here, Gad the prophet, seer of David, that's the actual verse it comes from, 2 Samuel 24:11. Okay, so incredible connections between Gad the prophet and all this concept of Ahiyah, Asher, Ahiyah. And meditate on it yourself, because I can only say so much. And when I'm looking at the screen and I've got 1,000 things that I'm trying to think and coordinate together, there's loads that I miss. And when I'm listening to the video, I'm thinking to myself, gosh, you should have really said that. Gosh, you should have really said that. There's loads of inspiration that's coming into my mind as I have to listen to the video at least once to make sure that it's all in order. But as I'm listening to it, I think, I can't believe I missed that connection. I didn't see that. I can only see so much when I'm actually putting the videos together. Sometimes I've gone on and done another video, and sometimes I just haven't got time. So what I'm saying is, meditate on this and allow whatever whatever inspiration to benefit you. Okay, let's have a look at the next slide then. Okay, so this is the next. This is incredible, by the way. Again, we've got this beginning bit of the verse, and the words of King David, the first and the last. Okay, so the words for the first. It can also mean the deeds. Devar can mean matters or deeds. It can also mean words. Okay, so this is unbelievable. It's got an ordinal of 1,200. It's got a regular of 1,267, which is exactly the same as the number that we've just been looking at. Ahiyah, Asher, Ahiyah. So we had and in the words of Gad the Seer related to 1,267. Ahiyah, Asher, Ahiyah. But also these words, the beginning. So the beginning and the end of this verse, both connected to a revelation of Ahiyah, Asher, Ahiyah. Okay, which is just utterly and absolutely incredible. I mean, it's just utterly and absolutely incredible. It really, really is. Right, let's have a look at some of these other numbers. So we've got this concept, the square ordinal of this verse comes to 3,470, which is a very important number. Okay, very important number. 347 is, but also 3,470, as we will see. I'm going to go through this as quickly as I can. So we've got this concept in the afternoon. This is when Joseph was meeting with his brothers in the afternoon. Okay, but Zaharayim would come at lunchtime or in the afternoon, for they heard that they would eat bread, and they prepared the gift until Joseph would come at lunchtime or in the afternoon, for they heard that there they would eat bread. So this is from Genesis 43:25. This is just prior to Joseph revealing himself. Od Joseph Chai, Joseph is still alive. Okay, so big connection there. However, let's have a look at this. There's some incredible numbers. Joseph is still alive. He's got a regular and ordinal. That ordinal is Mashiach ben Yosef, but Mashiach ben David. When David contains the extra Daleth, as it's spelt here, there's the David spelt with an additional Yud, look, comes to ordinal 92. So if we add the regular and the ordinal, get to 346. If we add the Kalel, which represents Alufo Shalalam, Master of the Universe, hiding himself within creation, it comes to 347. The fact that Joseph is still alive was hidden. That's why it's important to add the Kalel. The Aleph also reveals. It doesn't just conceal, but YHWH both conceals himself and reveals himself with the Aleph, because the Aleph is connected also to a revelation of the Mashiach. Right, to the dry land, Liyabos Shah. So this is the first time that the dry land is mentioned in the Torah. 347 that comes to. 50 is the ordinal, comes to 397 altogether. 50th level. This is the level of consciousness we've got to attain. It's face-to-face revelation of the level of it's the face-to-face level of consciousness that's connected to Bina. That's also connected to, which is understanding, the first letter here of the name YHWH. It's also the 50th gate of understanding. I've just said that, haven't I? It's also face-to-face relationships. So we can see even the suffering of the righteous, even this whole experience of exile is, to bring us to that place of being face-to-face with YHWH. And it's not until we understand the suffering of righteousness, the righteous, that we can thoroughly understand that. Again, who does that connect us back to? Yosef. The 50th gate is understanding the suffering of Yosef. Just as, why did YHWH have to send Yosef and put him through all that? Was for an ultimate salvation. Why did the Mashiach ben Yosef have to suffer and all this disguise and everything that has gone on in the life of Yeshua? Is for an ultimate salvation. Okay, and this is connected to the 50th level of understanding. We've got to attain that. We've got to be clear about the reason why YHWH has allowed us to experience the field of suffering. What is the purpose of that? It's to do with the work that we have got to do to transform that experience from the darkness and chaos into vessels of shalom, so that we can receive that he desires to receive to us. And that work and that struggle to accomplish that is part of the good that he desires to reveal to us. Okay, it's not easy. The dry land is very mystical, by the way, because how did we get out of Egypt into freedom? On the dry land. How did we cross from the desert into Eretz Israel? On the dry land of the Jordan. So the dry land is redemption. We go through on dry land. It's a code for Mashiach. It's not just a code for Mashiach. It's also a code for the name of YHWH. The name of YHWH fully revealed. Okay, let's go and have a look why. First of all, we'll look at this. Mashiach ben David. So I've also already said that 92, haven't I? From Od Yosef Chai is the same as Mashiach ben David. This is the ordinal of it. This is Mashiach ben Yosef when Yosef has got an additional Yod. It says Yosef gets a double portion. Now Yosef, the name Yosef is actually a verb. It means to add to and to increase or again or more. It's a verb, and many times, in fact 15 times in the Torah, it's written with an additional yod, but it's not the actual name Yosef that's written with an additional yod. It's the verb Yosef. I'm going to show you in a minute anyway. It comes to 126. So Mashiach ben Yosef, spelt this way, comes to 126, spelled with an additional yod. Mashiach ben Ephraim, okay, comes to 129. Add them up together, 447. So again, it's connected to the concept of Mashiach. Let me just go show you this, what I've just said. Okay, so this is what I use. This is one of the tools that I use for doing analysis. So I typed in, did a text search, common, type in Yosef, make sure that you're querying the entire of the Tanakh, spelt with an additional yod, and we'll come across these 15 times that it's found. Okay, and we can see like this one, Yosef, YHWH Elohechem, our God. Know for certainty that the Lord your God will no more drive out any of these nations. Okay, so it goes through, and then there's even this time here in Samuel where it's mentioned the name Yosef is mentioned next to David. So what can David say more? And this is where Yosef is a verb that means more unto thee. Unto thee, for thou, Lord God, knowest thy servant. So we can see within the Torah, the Tanakh I should say, there's 15 times this Yosef is spelt with an additional yod. I've talked about this. And here, look, even in 1 Chronicles 17, you've got, what can David speak more to thee for the honour of thy servant? So in that last instance, it was David spelt without the additional yod, wasn't it? Dawid, Od. Yet in, obviously it's a parallel verse in 1 Chronicles 17:18, you've got Yosef here. Let's go into it. Where are we now? Here, look. Ma Yosef od Dawid. So now you've got Yosef, and you've even got this word od, and that's connected to Yosef. Od Yosef Chai, but it's spelt next to the word for Dawid, spelt when Dawid includes the additional yod. What more David speak? What can David speak more to thee for the honour of thy servant, for thou knowest thy servant? Okay, so you can actually download this program for free off the internet. It's, the JLA Tanakh program. You can download it and you can do all kinds of gematria searches and things like that. And it does help a lot. It won't add up. So, when you get numerical values, like let's have a look at what this is. It's just too excessive, that. It's just like do Yosef, gematria, total values 166, and then place value of 58. Okay, and then it'll give you the full value, which is a filled out value, and then other things, but it doesn't add up, so you've got to do the adding up. It'll give you the squared regular, it doesn't give you a squared ordinal. You have to do that yourself, unless you were to create an array for yourself. You can create arrays, which means that you can program it up to take into consideration square ordinals. I should have done that before now, but I haven't done. So there we go, evidence that Yosef is spelt with a double yod. So we can get to go to 347, which connects up to this, and it connects up to this, and it connects up to Yosef is still alive. It's also the name of the anti-Mashiach, Armelos. Okay, so for everything holy, you've got an unholy counterpart. That creates the struggle. That gives us free choice, because you've got this wonderful light, then you've got the darkness that covers it up. Without Mashiach, without anti-Messiah, you have no Messiah. Without the darkness, you have no light. It's our struggle to reveal that. Look, when it comes to regular and ordinal, it comes to 424, which is Mashiach ben Dawid spelt without the additional yod. 424. Okay, so there's all kinds of things there, and then this is Mashiach ben Yosef for you. You've got the Mispar Gadol comes to 3,169, which is exactly the same as, and many wondered about you how mad his appearance is from that of a man, and his features from that of a people. So that comes to 3. Look at the numbers. It's unbelievable. It's doubly connected, is it not? It comes to, just let me check this out, because I didn't even notice this. This is unbelievable. It comes to 3,470, which is exactly the square ordinal of, and the words of King David the first and the last. But also, this is the Mispah Gadol, is it not? Just let me check that out, because I didn't even know that. No, I'm just getting myself a little bit carried away. I've obviously previously coloured this. It's exactly the same digits, but not in the same order as it. It's 3169, and that's 3961. Okay, so, you know, I wouldn't say that there was a connection between that, but this is exactly the same as a square ordinal, so there is definitely a connection. Okay, which is wonderful. Absolutely incredible. That whole Mashiach ben Yosef suffering with us in exile, that represents the truth that there's only YHWH, nothing else beside, is connected to all these and all these incredibly powerful concepts. Okay, I should have coloured that red. Okay, let's see what else I've got. Okay, just want to draw your attention to this number here, the 570, because that's what we're going to look at next. Bearing in mind that, and the words of King David, the first and the last, the ordinal regular and the Mispah Gadol regular, if we add them together, come to 570. Okay? And, okay, so we've got this verse from Judges 6:24. And Gideon built an altar to the Lord there, and he called it, Lord, who bestows upon us peace. Until this day, it is still in opera of the Abiezrites. Okay. So we've got this, look. YHWH Shalom, which is a name. Shalom is a name of YHWH. And like I say, we're in a process of trying to create those vessels of Shalom. Why? Because according to the Mishnah, Shalom is the only vessel that can contain a blessing. That's why peace in your home is so important. It contains a blessing. So filled, it's 570, which is exactly the same as and the words of David, the first and the last. This is connected to YHWH Shalom, is connected to the oil of greatness, which is the oil of greatness is the anointing oil that anoints the kings. You know, as in we want in King David anointed, we're going to need this Mishcha Derabuta, the oil of anointing. It's from the Chesed it's from the sphere of Chesed, which is kindness. Is the what's called the sphere of the high priest, because it's also the tree of life filled. Etz HaChaim is also 962. So YHWH Shalom, when YHWH in all his revelation is fit into vessels of Shalom, then we wrote tree of life consciousness, aren't we? The king is anointed with the Mishcha Derabuta. It's all glorious. And we've also got Zion, which is an appellation for Yosef. Zion, 156, is the same as Yosef. The ordinal is the same as Yosef. Together they come to Yosef. It's also 2 times 102, 2 times Emunah, faith. If we take the regular and add it on to the Mispah Gadol, regular, comes to 962. So Yosef is that key, isn't it, to revealing the concept of the tree of life, to, you know, that precedes the anointing oil of greatness, that anoints the king, and also connected to this whole concept of YHWH Shalom. Without the truth, we have no vessels of Shalom, because we can't subdue Asaph. We can't subdue the whole experience of exile in order to reveal the truth that there's only YHWH and nothing else beside him. And without that, we have no 50th gate. Without that, we don't attain the level of Bina. We haven't returned to the level that we should have returned to. It means to return the last letter here, the experience that we've been experiencing in exile, up to the level of the throne, up to the level of Bria, up to the level of the first letter here, which is where we're heading. Teshuv here means the return of the letter here to original status. We're in a fallen status, we've got to return. It's all connected. Okay. So YHWH Shalom, I've just repeated that. The mother of all living, which is the level of soul of King David, he is the level of soul of Chaya, who is called the mother of all living, 976. Moshe and Yeshua filled, that's Moshe filled, Yeshua filled at the level of Absolute, where, no, it's not the level of Absolute, is it? It's the level of, I think it's Bria, where the Aleph is filled with a Vav and the He is filled with a Yod. It's 976. That's where we're trying to head up to. Return of the letter He. Teshuvah. We're in the process of Teshuvah. The ultimate teshuva is to return to the place from which we have fallen. 976. So again, going on this unity between Moshe and Yeshua, it ushers in this and this, the unity between the light and the vessel of Shalom, the light of the name YHWH and the vessel of Shalom, and also the Torah of Moshe and the Torah of Mashiach ben Yosef. And again, I pointed out that we would come up to this Zakor, male. It also means to remember. We've got to remember who we are. 570. I'm sure Sha'ar Nun comes to 570. Sha'ar Nun is the 50th gate. I'll just go through this and see. I'm pretty sure Sha'ar Nun comes to 570. I might be wrong, but I'll come back to that. Sha'ar Nun means 50th gate of understanding. So we've got this concept, precious as gold, Chamudot Ketzahav. This is talking about the two copper vessels, fine copper vessels that was as precious as gold. YHWH Shalom filled. So YHWH and YHWH Shalom filled comes to 726. Right, so I'm just showing you this filled, basically. And then this is very interesting. Why is it interesting and what's it connected to? Let me just see now. Okay, there, I found it. The Mispar Gadol of YHWH Shalom. And that is the ordinal of evil inclination. So we've got to overcome our evil inclination. That is our Esav. That is our Shalom that comes out of Esav, isn't it? 1051 is exactly the same as the regular and ordinal of he must increase and I must decrease. So hu yelech holech werav we'ani elech holech we'chaser. Something like that. I ain't got the vowel point, so I don't know whether I've pronounced that exactly right. 1051. This is very significant because we're going to go and have a look at a verse that the words Ravlach was given over to Moshe from YHWH when he was petitioning. This is the verse connected to the verse that I first analysed. All these, thousands and thousands of pages of analysis have come. That was the seed. It was that verse and the verse at the end of Deuteronomy. That was the seed from which all my analysis was grown from. But these are the words of John the Baptist. John the Baptist was the teacher that taught Yeshua and then baptized him in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, which is really a revelation of the Aleph. Tifereth, Yesod, and Malkuth. I've spoke about this a lot. He taught him the truth, and that elevated his soul up to the level of the soul of Mashiach ben Yosef. And then he went out into the desert and was tested by the devil, Satan. Okay, but it was John the Baptist, and these are the most famous words of John the Baptist. He must increase and I must decrease. Okay, it's connected to a prophecy that was prophesied to Moshe. Ravlach, it is enough for you. We'll get to that shortly. Okay, I said I would have a look at this. 50 represents the 50th gate. Sha'ar Hanun, the 50th gate. Sha'ar is what comes to 570, so that's what I've got a little bit muddled up with that. Sha'ar Hanun, however, comes to 111, which is the Aleph. Okay, the 50th gate is the Aleph. How we transform that way that God conceals himself in the Aleph into how YHWH reveals himself as the Aleph. Okay, and then just to finish off, this is unbelievable. We've got this Mispar Gadol 3169. It's exactly the same as this. It is enough for you, but the Lord was angry with me because of you, and he did not listen to me. And the Lord said to me, it is enough for you. Speak to me no more regarding this matter. The gematria of it is exactly the same. 3169. That Ravlach is just what we were looking at with John the Baptist. He must increase and I must decrease. We saw the words, I highlighted them, the Rav and the Lach. Okay, so basically what was he saying? Arizal said that this word Rav Lach can mean a teacher for you, because Rav is a teacher, like Rabbi, Rav, and Lach it means for you. So rather than it is enough for you, it can also mean he's a teacher for you. Moshe was Yeshua. The soul of Moshe reincarnated in the life of Yeshua, because he's the Mashiach. There's only one Mashiach. He came first as Moshe. He was reincarnated into the life of Moshe. He was then elevated up through the teaching of John the Baptist, who taught him all the secrets to elevate his soul up to the level of Mashiach ben Yosef. Okay? Once he attained that, he was baptized by John the Baptist, and then that was his ministry. He was first tested by Satan, and then he started his ministry. Okay? He as Mashiach, but then again he had to die. And then he will come back again as Mashiach ben David. And this here, 3791, is exactly the same as the 5 strong leaves that surround the 13-petaled rose. This is what is written in the Zohar. I'm not going to go through this now because I go through it all. These are 5 concepts of Mashiach that represent the 5 aspects of the name YHWH, with the tip of the Yod, which is Moshiach ben Yosef here. And these are the Mispar Gadol numberings. Mashiach ben David, which is the Yod. And you need these 2 together to connect to the final letter here, to elevate it up from the level of exile to the level of redemption. Moshe, which is 345, he represents the letter He, the 50th gate. Yaakov, when it's Yaakov is spelt rectified, he represents the Vav. When he's got the truth, Od Yosef Chai. And Rachel, she is the letter He, the final letter He, but she needs to be told the truth, Od Yosef Chai, as well. She's the mother of Yosef. She needs to be told the truth, Od Yosef Chai. And how is that coming about? Well, it comes about through Moshe, who was told it isn't enough. When he was pleading to go into the Holy Land, no, it is enough for you. Your time to come into the Holy Land is later. When I send you a teacher to elevate you up to the level of Mashiach ben Yosef, and I did a teaching about this, it's called one of the first teaching I did on Arizal. It goes through this entire breakdown of this verse and how it's connecting to the concept of Mashiach ben Yosef and John the Baptist. Okay, so Rachel needs the truth, Od Yosef Chai, to be elevated up. This is the secret meaning of the Torah. So when Moshe was told it is enough for you, I will send a teacher for you. The teacher was John the Baptist. John the Baptist taught Yeshua, who was Moshe, the soul of Mashiach ben Yosef, Mashiach, the soul of the Mashiach of YHWH, who is Moshe, elevated up, and it will all come again. Okay, so the whole concept of Mashiach needs to be connected to the final letter here to elevate her up as well. And that's all. It's all wonderful. We can see how it's all connected. The 5 aspects of the Mashiach, which are basically a revelation of the name YHWH, the tip of the Yod, the He, as I've already said. And that is the way YHWH has revealed his infinite perfection and his oneness to us in finite reality. And we just have to have a vessel of Shalom to contain all that absolute oneness. And may it come soon. Okay, and I'll put in the description a link to the video that I did on Arizal, showing how that phrase, it is enough for you, is linked to John the Baptist. Don't forget to subscribe, because like I say, next time we're going to go through this whole concept of the Seal of Hezekiah and see how that's connected to Gad and the words of Gad, and also the concept of the Creator. Okay, so please subscribe and share, and Shalom.